GM, everybody. Welcome to a special 1 year anniversary edition of the Pinto Town Hall. So this week, Pinto turned 1 year old, which in the long arc of history, it may not be a lot, but uh, as many people said this week down here in Buenos Aires, wow, 1 year for a protocol in our space is like an eternity. That's amazing. Uh, and I really do think it is amazing. So, uh, yeah, the truth is, it's a very busy week down here. I would prefer to keep this town hall a little more brief to the extent that we can, but wanted to make sure that we had a chance to all sync up and celebrate 1 year of Pinto. So, why don't we start as we like to by hearing from some contributors, and then we'll take it from there. So, Frio, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well, doing well. This week we are rapidly approaching the next upgrade for the protocol, which includes two bigger upgrades and a couple minor upgrades. The WSTETH gauge implementation and the cell referral code. And after that, we also have some quality of life improvements to some of the functions we have in the protocol to allow for more gas efficient usage. This was inspired because Fayyaz has been working on revamping the pod marketplace as one of his first tasks. And one of the features is to allow for multiple listings to be cleared in one transaction due to the new cultivation system that we released in the Pinto system. So that, made it very clear that we needed to uh, clear multiple listings in one transaction, and thus, the more gas efficient that is, the more frictionless the marketplace is. Uh, Xtyping has been working on another feature which allows for dynamic call data, dynamically length call data within Tractor, and this will allow us to actually do a lot more things that we couldn't have done before. So, very exciting stuff there. But just my work was combining all the upgrades into one PR and getting that to the finish line.
Nice. Maybe for those who are less technical, could you explain why the upgrades to the marketplace are needed as such to facilitate multiple orders? And maybe also give a sense for what you can do with the dynamic call data?
Yeah, I mean, for the former, uh, typically within the Pinto ecosystem, you're able to batch multiple actions within one transaction using what we call farm, which is the Pinto's and Beanstalk's version of multi-call, which also allows for clipboard, allowing for dynamic but statically length call data within the system. Uh, you know, the current implementation is that within each farm call itself, though, within each action within the farm call, we uh, have these invariants that we check uh, to ensure that the system is still whole. This is secure beanstalk. So, this adds a considerable amount of gas overhead uh, when you're invoking each action. So this is what S Typin did. He just kind of made a bash wrapper around the other marketplace actions. Uh, Given that the individual components themselves probably won't hit these invariants individually, and we can just verify the invariants once rather than multiple within each action there. So that's the main gas efficiency there. And then for the latter, uh, both tractor and farm allow for dynamic call data, but they have to be fixed length. Or I guess the better term is that the length of the data must be known at time of execution, or sorry, at time of publishing. And this, restricts the domain in which we can do things. One notable way is that uh, when we're using routers typically have data that's both dynamic in content and the length is also unknown. So this has made it very, very hard to actually implement, efficient routing within blueprints. So by enabling not only dynamic changing content and within Tractor, but also make the length also dynamic, it allows for us to actually facilitate more features, such as improved routing, more gas efficient execution, specifically in mill plant harvest. Prior to this, the only way for us to autonomously allow any operator to harvest on other people's behalf was to kind of call this function on the Pinto protocol to get all the plots and then manually check, iterate through all the plots and see what's harvestable. Now we can move all that logic off chain in theory, uh, and save a significant amount of gas on that end too. So, all of these are very quality of life things, but from my perspective, money uh, should be as frictionless as possible. So, this is one step towards that direction.
Brilliant. Thank you for all that color. All right, Fayyaz. I know Frio shared a bit about what you're working on, but talk to us. How's it going?
All right, it's going well. As Fayyaz said, this week we are working on the referral system and iterating on the changes we made before, like the pod marketplace. Uh, I hope we will provide farmers. We will provide an easy interface for farmers.
Wonderful. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Frio.
Fair's is quite humble, but the marketplace was much, much more intuitive than the last iteration. You know, the marketplace really hasn't gotten any love since the launch. For those who don't know, the chart itself wasn't even live on day one. So, one of the features that we have now is that you can specify a range of, or a range of criteria you can choose to clear the order or listings. Additionally, we added another, third dimension to the pop marketplace, which is like color. Uh, I was talking with Brendan, and I was, showing him the new marketplace, and one of the things that he says that he feels like is a struggle to other participants is the relative attractiveness to a pot and or for a listing, and he coined a metric. We're calling it the pod score right now, but essentially it's the return on a listing over the place in line. So, if you get, for just to put some numbers out there, let's say you get 50% return over 2 million place in line, you're able to kind of use that as a reference point against other plots or other listings. And essentially what we've done is made a color coded scale so that intuitively people can see that which orders are a good or bad deal relative to the other orders. Not just using the place in line, just not using the price, but a more concrete number that I feel like is very useful there. So, Fairs has been hard at work on that, and hopefully soon we can release that.
Thank you, Fayyaz.
Well. If it isn't Dead Man Walking, what's up, sir? Long time no see. How are you?
DM Pintos, I'm doing good. What about you guys? Thought I should take in on you, see what's up.
What's up? Thanks for being here. Great to hear your voice. All right. Why don't we kick it over to Burr? How are you, sir? Well, I think it's that time of the month again where Burr's microphone doesn't work. So, while he's trying to fix that again, why don't we kick it over to Pinto Pirate?
Hey guys, doing well. And yeah, I just want to say too, Ben, I'm looking forward to watching the recordings of your talk that you gave. As I'm sure all of us
Thanks. I doxed you in
yeah.
the talk, Pinto Pirate. So.
Oh yeah.
No,
Oh,
I'm just joking.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah. So this week I deployed those improvements that I've been talking about for the tractor indexer. So that's live. That's been working well so far. So what that does basically is, now when orders are published or they're executed, we'll get that data like more immediately reflecting in the UI or in in the Discord bot channels. So that should give like a better experience to anyone who's like publishing an order, and then it'll actually show up on the UI for them right away. So that's good to go. And then since then, I added some more data points to like the big everything chart on the UI that's currently in review. And so there's 6 new charts that you'll be able to select, and that will be the crop ratio, the convert down penalty, the percentage, and then the blight factor that goes along with that. And then for the convert up bonus, there'll be the stock per PDV, the seasonal max capacity, and the capacity used during that season. So those will all be showing up on that chart pretty soon. And then, beyond that, I think there's like a couple different things that I'm thinking about. I haven't started working on this yet, but one thing I was thinking about kind of when I was working on that chart is, if there's like some improvements we can make to have those all like the all-time charts on the UI loading faster. As Pinto is, as we know, is 1 year old now. We have over 8,000 seasons, and as there becomes more and more seasons, just unfortunately, kind of with the way subgraphs work, kind of the more there are, it just takes a really long time to, kind of get that information out of the subgraphs. And so there's definitely some, solutions and strategies we can come up with to make getting some of that data faster. Like we'll need to have some kind of like caching service that's, like between the subgraph and the UI. But unclear what that looks like, but I think there'd be a lot of value in working on that, just because like loading up some of those charts it's starting to become very noticeable how slow it is. So that's on my mind as well.
Yeah, is there a new equivalent to subgraphs, or still not yet?
I mean, there are other services or like frameworks you could say that like do something similar, but I mean, really the problem is that it would just be like a rewrite of of everything that we have in the subgraph. So I mean, at least for like some of like the new or like the more complicated stuff, like for tractor, for example, those are not in like the typical like the graph protocol subgraph. Those are like within like a separate like API that I've like built and designed, which is like more I guess like optimized like for this use case. But a lot of like our historical data analysis, like it's just that's just kind of how it was written, like at least for Beanstalk, and we brought a lot of that code over, and so
Got it. Makes sense. Soylent Pintowitz, welcome, sir. All right. Why don't we kick it over to Burr? Microphone check. Mic check. 2 1 2. Mic check. Mic check.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Sorry about that. So I, this past week, have been working on the WSTETH migration. I've been working closely with Freeho and have basically basically finalized most of the changes. I'm doing some final testing here and there. Just making sure we can do converts and swaps and converting between LPs and whatnot. And then have been helping Fayyaz on a couple of his PRs, just overlooking some of his stuff and helping him out. But yeah, the WSTETH migration stuff is looking to be pretty close. So excited to see that one go out.
Fabulous. Very exciting. Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
All right. Pinticito. ¿Qué pasa?
Hola, hola. Estoy aquí en Buenos Aires, having a blast. So it's been a great week. It was wonderful to be able to witness Ben speak 3 different times here in Argentina. all 3 have been recorded and will be shared, so people will get access to those hopefully next week. That's what we were told. And otherwise, just been talking to people about both of our projects, Pinto and Nebula, and have gotten some awesome feedback. So it's been really valuable to connect with some people for potential integrations, to get some feedback on the UI, on the pitch, to hear people's sentiment, and also different target users, how they think about it. It feels like this is something that is most appealing to the quirky, interesting, probably developers who are interested in fun and important DeFi projects, which are creative. Um, what we have here is a really awesome mechanism tackling an important problem. And I think to a certain kind of person, it's quite an interesting value prop and experiment. So, I think it was not like something to get people to put their money into in the first moment, given that um, people wanted to generally look at it more, read about it more. So made some good connections. Um, but it's been very valuable, and hopefully we'll have some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. And that's been most of my week, meeting people, trying to think about reach more rigorously. Uh, so it's been very valuable.
It's great to hear. On my end, it's been a lot of fun being down here in Buenos Aires. It's actually been a lot of love for Pinto. One of the people that is heavily involved in organizing Stable Summit declared 2026 will be the year of the decentralized stablecoin. So that let's all carry that energy into next year. The talks went well. It was great to be on a panel with the FX protocol people. The Ride Dollar, Bert, he was interesting, but it's still unclear sort of what they're doing. But the FX protocol is actually very interesting, and it got me thinking about. This is something I saw Mod just hopped in, so sort of perfect timing. How you can build FX protocol on top of Pinto, where you can offer people the ability to go long or short and basically just hedge the liquidity in the liquidity pools independently. So I think as we, and like I said, I'd prefer to keep this town hall a little shorter just because it's crazy busy down here. But I think as we start to talk about what layer 5 of the model looks like, I think figuring out how to generate yield through utility independent of utility of the currency, like just utility from the liquidity that we have in the protocol, it'll be interesting to see like what we can do with the value that we have. So now that we're at this point where, and I think one of the other things we talked about, I see Ford Pinto here, that we spoke about a couple weeks ago, was the protocol automatically converting on behalf of depositors. So there's a couple like pieces of the puzzle that I think should constitute layer 5. And with respect to Pinto, a lot of my brain power at this point is just going to how do we actually want to set up the next year of development, let's call it. Earlier this year in about March, we had a powwow with many of the greatest minds in algo stables, many of whom have contributed to Beanstalk and Pinto, and we were able to come up with a lot of improvements, the vast majority of which have been implemented this year. And we're sort of at the tail end of that cycle. So my brain's just starting to go to what's next. And hopefully we'll be talking a lot more about that in the coming weeks. All right. Gonna open up the floor briefly. I see we have a lot of former contributors here as well, which is great to see. So the floor is open if people have anything they wanted to talk about. But again, I would just ask that we try to keep this one a little short, just because Pintocito and I are running around Buenos Aires here a little bit like crazy people.
So I have a question, which is a bit like controversial, I think. So I was reading the failures, forks, and forges article, and in that article, you mentioned, Ben, on your website that, and I quote, "In the coming months, we intend to support the deployment of a number of Beanstalk forks that effectively start Beanstalk over from scratch to collect a variety of data." You know, we passed the 1 year anniversary of Pinto. Pinto has undoubtedly collected, a ton of data. Like there has been like thousands of transactions across like bear and bull market, like market conditions across different like liquidity pools. And there have been like numerous improvements, which, as you said, like have been implemented, and some are still on the horizon. So my question is like, have you guys considered like reforking at some point? Maybe that would correspond with the launch of Nebula, for example, since we know this is coming like relatively soon. And if not, then why? And what are you looking to gain in terms of data from the current iteration?
It's a great question. I definitely think about forking regularly. In particular, I think that there's ultimately one credit history as it currently stands, where we have Beanstalk and Pinto. And originally, I think when we wrote that, our expectation was that there was going to be sufficient difficulty collecting good enough data that it might be required to fork the thing multiple times consecutively. But in the first 6 to 9 months of Pinto, and now we've hit a year, there was certainly enough data that we're about to put out our 15th upgrade of the year. And these upgrades are essential to us collecting data, which I think we obviously could have collected different data, additional data potentially, with the addition of other forks or the launch of other forks. But there is some opportunity cost in terms of the improvements that can be made. And given the amount of work that we were able to scope out earlier this year just on Pinto, it just ended up being that the optimal thing to do has been to continue to just work on this particular version of the currency. It's worth saying, I think there's a high cost to forking from the social element of people remaining interested in some unified currency. So I don't think forking should be done that lightly, although I do think a culture of forking is quite healthy. The other thing is, the fork system, which we've proposed, which I think that article is from, still hasn't been implemented. So we've continued to work on the design there, but one of the frictions there is just that our fork system isn't live yet. So when it comes to overall, it's like, well, we've had a lot of work to do. We've been collecting meaningful data. We've been able to make meaningful progress on the model, and also there's still a very high friction socially and development wise to forking. With respect to Nebula, I don't think it necessarily is related to creating a new version, although it's something I've thought about. At this point, still not sure, honestly.
So you're saying if the fork system is ready and and you've like exhausted all the possible upgrades that have been discussed in the current iteration, then it could be like a possibility, like right around
Yeah,
the
I would
launch.
say. I would say that's even probably too strong. Like exhausting all potential improvements. It's like there's infinite improvements we can make here.
Right.
So it's a multi-dimensional problem, I would say. And at this point, I think it's hard to say one way or another. My instinct has been to use Pinto specifically, but we'll see. We'll see. In order to kick off the open interest flywheel that we've talked about, you do need yield, and the system is pretty far away from yield, at least at the moment. So, yeah, a bit of an open question. I don't know,
Yeah,
but it's the right question to ask.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying it's I think your head is in the right spot around like what are the conditions under which forking would make a lot of sense, but we're not there yet.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for answering. And I mean, generally, yeah, activity has been like fairly low from what I see looking at the channels lately. So yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was curious to hear your thoughts, but I think you answered perfectly. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for your question. Thanks for showing up. Great to hear from you.
My 2 cents on the forking, one thing I was thinking about, I was looking at the Pinto Twitter, and there was a tweet that says, let me bring it up. A central bank without the ability to debase its currency. Because we have this target at $1. For me, a valuable fork that we could see is that one where a Pinto model that does have the tool to debase its currency. We have this value target that is static, and we have options to kind of return back to the value target. But to me, it doesn't seem like we can add a feature that, on this Pinto fork, on this version that said, hey, the value of the currency can debase, right? And I don't feel comfortable with upgrading that, even though the rules of the protocol says that we can, in theory, change it. That to me is certainly something that does warrant a fork in terms of experimentation and much more justified. Whereas, all these upgrades in the last year, the cultivation system, the convert bonus, and penalty, this can be implemented on any fork from my perspective. Maybe the parameters need to be tweaked, maybe like the conditions may be different, but at a high level, it seems like these upgrades would affect any Pinto fork. So for me, like the thing that I see to change, to justify forking is to experiment on features that we truly can't do on this Pinto fork. I think we said like a year ago, one instance of having a Pinto model that prints when it's very close to value target, but not at value target. That's another interesting vector that may or may not be on Pinto fork. But these are the things I think is qualifies for forking.
I mean, you could also make the argument that some of these improvements weren't live when a lot of people was around, right? So launching the convert bonus when we're at 50 cents is like completely different when we're at 90 cents and $20 million of liquidity, for example, and like 1,000 active users. So like just in terms of participation and even UI work and like UI intuitiveness, like you could also make the argument that you could gather, more rich data by forking without even changing the code.
I think there's a really high social cost to forking. Personally, if there was another fork launched, I would be disappointed in the project because it would just feel like a money grab. And I think that people that are looking at this from afar, looking at Beanstalk, seeing how it got hacked, looking at Pinto, how it was relaunched, and there was a little bit of controversy around the relaunch there because it was not announced to the initial Beanstalk community, and then hearing that a third fork would be launching, to me, that would just, as an outsider, if I was an outsider, I would think that it would look very fishy, and I would not be interested. So I think it would be much more. It would speak much more to the model if it was able to repeg, at least the current iteration of Pinto, then that would be a lot more of a success story to me than just like, let's just keep launching and launching for more attention. that would be, I think, overall detrimental to the idea and to algo stables like as a whole.
Plus one as well. I don't think we're at the stage where we need to fork.
Yeah, I would say I'm generally in agreement that there's a high social cost. I do think Frio's points about if we were to make significant changes to the structure of the currency, I think it's hard to justify doing that for Pinto. But I'm generally in agreement with Ford and Mod that the cost is high, and we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm keeping my Pinto tag on, for a while.
Awesome.
I think the temperature finally raising is getting interesting because it was held kind of at like 700, 750 for so long. Now we're starting to see some bids at some higher numbers, and it just took so little capital to kind of keep the temperature in check that it felt kind of unrealistic. So maybe there's some improvement to the protocol that could be made there. There's a balance between keeping the temperature, quote unquote, under control, but also allowing people to allowing the temperature to grow to where there's like really a market bid for it. It looks like, around 1,000 there's a number of bids, and then around 2,000 there's more bids. That's interesting to me. Like, we're very far, I think, from seeing the key mechanism, which is sewing and the temperature, allowing it to perform its job of repegging the currency.
Yeah, I think the UI can do a much better job of showing these bids. Like, it's so deep in the system. You have to go to the field and then click on this very small see all tractor orders. And then, even then it's not a visual indication. It's just like numbers, right? Yeah, super interesting. I think it's interesting how you can solve this or what to tweak. You can make the cultivation factor rise faster. You can make the temperature change itself faster. I find this stuff very interesting personally.
That's a great point about the chart. If you could put the bids like on the max temperature chart, maybe, then that would give you a better visual indicator of like, where the bids are starting to come in, and kind of like better predict what will happen to the temperature over time, assuming that those bids stay in place. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I would like it so, because the model is deterministic, assuming you know demand, like you can forecast how many seasons it would take to reach 1,000, right? Right now, if it's 976 for a max temperature, it goes up 0.5% every season. It's only like 68 seasons until you reach it. That's valuable data from my perspective.
Free Dome, welcome, sir. Where do I sign up? All right. Unless there's anything else, I think we should call it here just because, like I said, Pintacito and I are running around a bit today. Would appreciate ending a little bit early, but grateful for some of the old contributors to stop by with some of their thoughts. And yeah, there's a lot more to be done here, a lot more improvements to be made. And this is all still the very early days in Algo stable history. So thank you all very much for being here. And we'll pick this up, I think, same time next week because on Thursday it's Thanksgiving. So we'll probably do same time next week. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Here, guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Peace.